Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mpho Tsedu. The latest local government audit results by Auditor General Kimi Makwetu has revealed 815 million rands in wasteful expenditure. Fraud and corruption, shoddy financial statements and bad supply chain management are still the main causes of this wasteful use of funds. However, shortage of skills remains a common denominator in almost all of South Africa's municipalities and municipal entities. My guest today is Auditor General Kimi Makwetu. AG, welcome to the show. Perhaps, I know you've been doing a lot of press briefings about this matter. Overall, what are your impressions? What are your points of concern?
Well, thanks very much, Mpho. I think the starting point for me is that at the center of this report that we've issued are three issues. One of them is around the issue of accountability, which demands of people to answer to responsibilities conferred upon them. I think that's the first issue. Yeah. I think that's a critical one. I guess the next one is about the transparency in the system in respect of those obligations that are conferred upon people in municipality, as well as the whole question of integrity. I think if you look at our report, you can almost extract those key, very important principles that are about driving good governance in any system.
Okay. Now, 815 million rand wasted. Surely, somebody would have to answer. You have made the findings. What's next?
Well, I guess our findings, because of the nature of an audit extracts these things based on the tests that we do. The remaining step that we think needs to happen is for those that are charged with governance to bring about issues of accountability. Firstly, to go deeper into what gives rise to these issues, who is to take accountability for those mismanagement of funds, and take the appropriate action which the law requires them to do.
Okay. It's said to be, what, a 31% rise in fruitless use of funds. What would you attribute this to?
Well, I mean, in any system, if you've got a basic discipline of internal control, which is about protecting those funds and making sure that business of government or any other entity is carried out as agreed, should those basic systems and those basic disciplines of control fall apart, you're bound to have the likes of unauthorized expenditure, you're bound to have the likes of irregular and wasteful expenditure. So at the bottom of it is an environment where you have controls that have been defined theoretically but are not being applied in practice. That's where the gap is. Because we as auditors, we audit to the law and the rules that prescribe how things should happen. The minute we find those things are not happening as designed, we detect the gap and suddenly we identify that there's all manner of undesirable activities taking place. Okay.
If we look at what we have on our screen there, you've got 815 wasteful expenditure. External consultants are taking a whopping 695, and irregular expenditure goes to the tune of 11.6 billion rands. Let's look at these external consultants. Is there no capacity within local government?
There's no question about the fact that there's a number of people who find their way into local government in areas like financial management. And if you think about it, where an environment has got low barriers to entry, meaning that if I'm a consultant, there is no rigorous assessment. As a matter of fact, if I'm an employee, there is no rigorous assessment about my potential and skills, and I get put into a position as a CFO in a municipality. Now, the role of a municipal chief financial officer, among others, and ultimately, is to report on the financial statements. They can do everything they do during the month and during the year, but ultimately they must produce a set of accounts. Now, there are certain technical pronouncements and some basic disciplines that enable anybody to produce a set of accounts. You can't just have a piece of paper and write numbers on it. You've got to go through a rigorous process of producing financial statements. Now, if a person comes into the CFO position with less than the minimum competencies required, the institution is still bound to produce a set of financial statements.
Yes.
Hence, they have to go outside and get somebody to produce it for them. And that's where that cost is coming from.
Now, okay.
And perhaps if I may add,
yes,
this cost comes on the back of an expectation for the quality of these financial statements to be better than if they were done by somebody internally. But our auditors found that even the quality of these financial statements that we audited, after they had been panel beated by somebody who is ostensibly technically more advanced than the ones internally, we still find a shoddy set of financial statements that we are not able to express a clean opinion on. So you've got a double whammy.
Yeah, so there's no capacity inside and sometimes there's no capacity outside. And
the capacity outside comes at a cost.
Let's look at another slide here, which I would just want you to talk to. Some, I mean, like we say, don't have the required qualifications. You've got 30 CEOs and 32 CFOs and 39 supply chain managers who do not have the required qualifications. This should render such organizations basically, in a crisis mode.
I think the report we've issued largely reflects that sentiment.
Then what happens? I mean, surely you can't just AG say, right, here they don't have a qualified CEO. Do you then recommend that perhaps he or she must be replaced? This item on the issue of skills comes on the back of our analysis of what the root causes of the bad audit outcomes is. So we don't go there to go and check who's got qualifications, who doesn't. But we say to ourselves, now that we've found these gaps, as well as these deficiencies, some of which are very basic and simple, what is sitting behind it? We then make inquiries to check who is responsible for producing these accounts. Then we come to that conclusion. Do you perhaps conduct a skills audit at the same time?
We don't. There's a minimum competency requirement that is set out by National Treasury, which dictates that you ought to have a certain minimum set of competencies to do a particular role, whether it is in municipalities or in provincial or national departments. So what we then do is we inquire who prepared these accounts and what level of competency do they possess. And that's how we come to that conclusion.
I wanted to take a break. Perhaps when we return, let's talk about that subject of accountability and the question of corruption as well. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Please don't go away.
Jessica the hippo was found after she was washed down the river shortly after birth. Today, she is a large hippo and still returns for feeding and human interaction.
She also loves body exfoliating. She has a mask as well.
Jessica is the world's most famous hippo, and perhaps she's the only one who has forgotten how aggressive she's supposed to be.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News. SABC News, we've got Africa covered.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. I guess today is the Auditor General, Gimi Magwetu. Now, AG, the question of accountability. I would say local government is quite a very technical department or level of governance whereby there seems to be a lot of politics that really goes on or governs the way things are done there. You know, that's where councillors are closest to their branches. So what they do at municipal level is very much close to, you know, what may be questioned at a local branch meeting, you know, of political parties or something like that. Now, I would therefore want to check, when it comes to accountability, who is taking this, accountability, if one may put it in that way? Is it the political leadership at local level? Is it the bureaucrats, if I may use the word?
Maybe let's start with clearing our understanding, and perhaps maybe just to share my understanding of what this accountability entails. As I said earlier on, it's an obligation to answer to responsibility conferred. And this comes in two ways. One, the people that elect public officials confer power to them by electing them. But following that power, they then give them financial resources to meet their needs, among others. And that's effectively the context in which this accountability issue we are raising. We're saying when they have to report on their activities, as well as on the financial matters that they handled on behalf of the municipality, as well as compliance with the laws and regulations that govern financial management, we find a lot of these institutions wanting, which means that they have not been able to answer to their obligation about the things they said they will do. And our report is drawing attention to that because we think the issue of accountability is a fundamental principle in the public sector when it comes to issues of governance. So the failure, therefore, to account accurately, as evidenced by the accounts that we issue, is largely at the root cause of this. Because when people don't account, it gets even worse when there are no consequences for them not accounting. Because there's a huge absence of consequences in the sector with regards to when somebody doesn't do what is expected of them, what then happens. And that's one of the issues we are raising in our report. We're saying that consequences, if they were attaching to people who are not accountable for the resources and all of that. And you must remember also the other reality is that a lot of the activities in public institutions happen in remote environments. I can go to a place in a municipality which is 60 kilometers away from the center. If I'm the only person who knows what it is that I'm doing there and for how much, whether it's complete, whether it's of good quality, good luck to the municipality if it thinks it will know how much was spent and whether it was spent for the good cause. So that's where the issue of accountability comes in for us. So I guess in the realm of that objective, institutionally, we're finding a lot of challenges. And therefore it may link very well with the issue you're raising regarding the conflation of the responsibilities between those that are in public service as well as those that are in local branches.
Out of, 278, only 22 get clean audits. Or rather, you had, 319, I don't know if this is including municipal entities as well. Do you get the sense that this animal, let me call it that, called MFMA, is well understood by people who are supposed to be accounting officers?
It may be a good idea to give a lot more prominent attention to whether this MFMA is understood, not just by those accounting officers, but by everybody. Because this is a law that was brought about by the legislators in South Africa. And I guess when they brought it about, they had some intentions about what they wanted to achieve out of it. For example, if you look at Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 of the MFMA, it's very clear what the responsibilities of a chief financial officer are. It's very clear what the responsibilities of an accounting officer are, which is a municipal manager.
Yes.
It lays them out in very clear terms. However, when those things are not done, it goes back to a question about whether there are consequences for those things not being done. Now, which one is stronger? Is it the law that tries to drive accountability, or is it any other law that somebody, for example, you had a law that you are going to be arrested if you throw a plastic bottle on the street. Maybe there's a need to weigh the weight in respect of the objectives of these laws. Because quite frankly, the MFMA only gets referred to when there's a problem. It is not a law that is actively pursued in order to achieve those higher ideals that are set out in the law. And I'm sure if you take time to go through that chapter, which is about 2 or 3 pages, you will get a sense of what it is that is expected of a person who is at the helm of a municipality as a municipal manager, and what the law says must happen when that person doesn't meet that obligation.
Yeah.
But when we do our audits, we seldom find any of that which should happen happening. And that's where the challenge is.
Well, there's something called deviation, which they always use to justify why they did things in another way.
Well, there are things that are allowed to be deviated from, as long as you follow the due process in terms of being transparent about it. But you don't deviate from a law and say that I'm deviating because deviation is allowed. You deviate from something that is specifically mentioned in law, and it also gives you guidance as to what steps you must take to deviate when you deviate from it. So in some instances, what we see, particularly when it comes to issues of supply chain management,
yes,
if I may stay on that issue. Supply chain management is a very lucrative environment because you're dealing with resources that impact quite a variety of people. Think about it. All of us wake up and sleep in municipalities. Whether you are a doctor, a teacher, a nurse, a worker, any of that kind of person, you live in a municipality. And when you perform supply chain management by means of procuring goods and services, and you do not follow the rules, we are going to get such things as the municipality doing business with close relatives or municipality doing business with people that are related to the one who makes the decision. So you really collapse the entire system of conflict of interest management, because how do we know that you are getting good value for money if you did not do this transaction at arm's length, if you didn't pursue transparency in procuring goods and services? So that's where the crux of it is, because hidden in those deviations are intentions that are not written on the invoice.
Let's take a break. When we return, we'll wrap up the program, look at what SALGA is saying and what their responsibilities and role is actually as far as some of these challenges are concerned. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Please don't go away.
Good evening and welcome to yet another edition of Sports Live, the show that brings you the latest local and international news, live interviews with the who's who in sport. He's the first South African to wear a yellow jersey that was at the Tour de France this year.
It's the first time that we get a boxer who's recognized by the Ring magazine as the best fighter in the planet to visit our country.
And he's very close to world record pace. And in fact, it is a new world record.
When you cross the line, what went through one's mind?
None of the four of us knew who had won. The scoreboard is always on the left, but all of us tend to the right. No, we just waited for the country to go down. RSA.
That's Sports Live, daily at 8:30 p.m. on SABC News.
10 South Africans survived 2014. Many of us actually were given bursaries by state-owned enterprises, but the state shrunk, telecom was privatized, and now we are sitting with huge unemployed people, but huge backlogs in terms of infrastructure that could develop the same young people.
It's in our hands, and our future is up to us. It's a tough year, and tough decisions will have to be made by the government. It's an election year, which makes it difficult to make tough decisions. I mean, it's tough to make tough decisions. It's especially tough in an election year.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today is the Auditor General, Kimi Magwetu. Now, AG, the South African Local Government Association, upon your report, said they released a statement. They say where they believe that your report is a key indicator of the state of local government, and the information and insight presented in the report is aimed at empowering oversight structures as well as leaders in local government to focus on issues that will result in reliable financial statements, credible reporting on service delivery and compliance with laws and regulations. I would say this is an obvious thing. Of course, that's what your report is supposed to do. But somehow, I don't think SALGA is taking full responsibility for all this mishaps within the sector, because they represent the leaders of the sector themselves.
Exactly the last point you're making. I think SALGA is strategically placed to make a difference in local government because they are effectively an association that represents the elected representatives. Now, if they use their power as well as the influence they have as SALGA to prevail upon the political leadership to do the best they can, at least to intervene in situations where local government does not show the good disciplines of accountability, instead of interfering in the day-to-day administrative processes. If they can make a break with that and focus on insisting and persuading their leaders who are the political appointees or political representatives, it will probably go somewhere. Because if they go themselves to municipalities and try and do that which appointed officials are supposed to do, I can guarantee you they won't make a difference. Because it's at the center of the council of a municipality that a lot of these behaviors as well as these ill disciplines in financial management will go away. For as long as there is no proper understanding and persuasion of the political leadership at a municipal level, which I believe SALGA can play a role in. And of course, they have said themselves that they see quite a lot of these issues not going away because of no real will at the level of some of the political representatives.
I asked one question here when we started regarding cadre deployment. Do you think it's compromising service delivery here?
I'm not able to conclusively say so, but I think it's generally, what is in the public domain. Because people that live in these municipalities know who are these individuals that are put in these municipalities who do not have the minimum competencies. You'll find people saying so-and-so is now in a particular municipality as a human resource specialist, but we left in standard 5 together.
Yeah.
So there's enough evidence in those local communities to suggest that indeed the issue of deployment of cadres is a big challenge. However, from our side, we see the angle that deals with lack of competencies. And that angle that we see is normally reinforced by evidence of people who know everybody that works in these municipalities. So quite frankly, it's not far from the truth.
Did you have it easy when you had to do this rounds? Were you easily welcomed?
By its very nature, an audit is not an easy exercise. It's a pursuit that is about trying to determine whether the rules that are set are being observed. Human nature generally does not always observe all the rules. So it's a tough call. All of our 3,000 odd people, as well as those firms in the private sector who do these audits, do get into some challenging environments. But we go in there with the spirit that we didn't think the audit effort was an easy effort in the first place. And it's always been like this for many years. And so we are more than ready to charge on and continue doing what we do, because we believe that if all of these issues of transparency, accountability, and good governance are promoted, it will be bringing us closer to the realization of the higher ideals that will make public sector work without having to worry about the audit reports of the Auditor General. Because in any case, what we do is a confirmation of what management ought to be saying themselves.
What does this then say to the integrity of the sector?
Well, of course, there are many issues that point to the fact that the issues of integrity in the sector are still far from where we want them to be. It's still a sector that does not pride itself for good, transparent systems, nor does it pride itself with good accountability systems. So the journey is a long one, but we believe that those that have come into the space as clean audits, as well as those that have been unqualified in terms of their financial management, have demonstrated a willingness to be counted among the institutions that are credible in local government. If you cast your mind 5 years ago, we had a dominant number of municipalities that were disclaimed or that had adverse opinions. And that number has come down significantly over 5 years. And we are starting to see the growth of unqualified audits, even though they have not yet cracked the issue of doing good control disciplines. So if all of the players in the system, starting from the cooperative governance and traditional affairs department to National Treasury, to the councils themselves, SALGA, internal audit fraternity, a combined effort of all of these institutions, including the performance monitoring and evaluation unit in the presidency that has already done an exercise in this area to do a pilot in about 10 municipalities across provinces. The combined effect of those, if it is channeled towards very direct actions in municipalities and attach consequences, could see local government in a different space.
Is this report going back to the municipalities themselves? Okay, perhaps let me say yes, indeed. I mean, they will get hold of it. But then, doesn't somebody ask, the CFO or the MM, what happened to them? Because in other instances, nobody can tell you what happened to 50 million rands.
The reality, Mpo, is that at the end of November, we issued a report. When we issue the report at the end of November, it's the set of financial statements. That's what we audit. We audit the numbers on the balance sheet, as well as the numbers on the statement of comprehensive income, what used to be called an income statement,
yes,
as well as other disclosures that are required for financial management purposes. We then issue the report with our audit opinion at the end of November to the municipality, right? When it reaches the municipality, the mayor and the municipal manager are responsible for its clearance. After that, before the end of January, the Municipal Structure Systems Act prescribes that all of the municipalities in the country must have submitted their financial statements and annual report to the council. Now, the council is a constitutional structure that receives this annual report. And I guess your question is whether council looks at this report from a compliance point of view or whether they apply any rigor. The jury is out. And I think our report points to the fact that it probably is not happening.
AG, you don't have an easy job.
I understood it to be so.
Well, wishing you all the best going forward.
Thank you.
That was question time for today. Have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.